There are wounds the body heals from, and there are those that never fade, the kind that etch themselves into the soul, shaping the way a person sees the world forever. Some wounds, you don't talk about. You carry them in silence, hidden beneath forced smiles and quiet stares, pretending they don't exist. But deep down, they do. They always do. And sometimes, the only way to heal is to finally tell your story. My name is Anastasia, and this is my story. The evening was heavy with the smell of rain-soaked earth as I stood by my mother's grave. I was just 12, too young to understand the full weight of what was happening, yet old enough to feel the emptiness settle inside me. My tiny hands clutched the hem of my older brother David's shirt, my face buried in his side to hide my tears. The murmurs of mourners blended into a distant hum as grief swallowed me whole. She had been my anchor, the one who braided my hair in the mornings, the one who sang me lullabies at night. But now she was gone, leaving behind a void too vast for words. Just 2 years later, my father followed. His body had been worn down by sickness and sorrow, as if he could not bear to live without her. One night, David sat beside me, his voice laced with the heavy weight of responsibility. "Anastasia, you can't stay here," he said softly. "I'll take you to Lagos. Maybe we'll find a way." I didn't want to leave Makurdi, the village that held the last memories of my parents. But there was no one left to fight for me. So I packed what little I had and followed David, clinging to the fragile hope that Lagos would bring something better. I was wrong. Lagos was overwhelming, loud, chaotic, suffocating. The honking of buses, the shouts of traders, the mix of exhaust fumes and cooking fires filled the air. It was nothing like home. David lived in a cramped apartment with 3 other mechanics. There was no space, no privacy, and no hope of me going back to school. Instead, David found me a job. "You'll work for a rich family," he told me, avoiding my eyes. "They'll treat you well." That was the day I met Madam Rosa. She exuded wealth and warmth, her smile reassuring. "You'll like it here," she said as she led me inside her grand house. "You'll take care of my children." But weeks passed, then months, and no children appeared. "They're on vacation," Rosa would say whenever I asked, her tone light and dismissive. Her husband, Romanus, was a quiet man, his sharp eyes lingering on me for reasons I didn't understand at first. I tried to convince myself that I was imagining things, the way he watched me as I swept the floor, the way he stood too close when passing me in the hallway. Until the night I woke up to find him standing in my room. "I just wanted to check on you," he murmured. But the way he looked at me made my skin crawl. His presence became more frequent, his touches more deliberate. I tried to avoid him, but the mansion felt smaller every day. Then came the night he overpowered me. I wanted to scream, but fear silenced me. I wanted to run, but where would I go? The weight of his betrayal crushed me, but I had no voice, no one to tell. That night, I buried my face in my pillow and cried silently. Months later, my body betrayed me. I fell ill, weak, nauseous, unable to hide it. Rosa noticed. She took me to the hospital, concern laced in her voice. The doctor's words felt like a slap. "Congratulations, you're pregnant." The ride back was silent. When we reached the house, Rosa erupted. You seduced him, didn't you? She accused, pacing like a storm brewing. You ruined everything. I knelt on the cold marble floor, tears streaming down my face as I tried to explain. But Rosa wasn't interested in the truth. Later that night, she returned, her voice calm but her eyes sharp. We'll take care of you, she said. But this baby, it will be ours. You're too young to be a mother. No man will marry you with a child. We're doing this for you. I felt the walls closing in. What choice did I have? My voice barely above a whisper, I said, okay. From that moment, I became a shadow in the house. Rosa hid me from the world, telling neighbors I had returned to the village. I spent my days in silence, my hands resting on my growing belly, drowning in uncertainty. When the time came, I wasn't taken to a hospital. A nurse was brought to the house instead. The pain was unbearable, but in the end, I heard the soft cry of my baby boy. He's healthy, the nurse said with a smile. I reached out for him, but Rosa stepped in. He's mine now, she whispered. The days blurred together after that. I was allowed to see my son only during feedings. Rosa carried him everywhere, cooing, smiling, introducing him to guests as her own. I watched from the shadows as my son called another woman, Mummy. I told myself I could endure it. That I had no choice. But then I found the documents. While cleaning Romaina's study one day, I came across a folder. Inside were passports, visas, 3 names listed, Romainus, Rosa, and my son. They were planning to leave the country. Without me. My hands trembled as I clutched the papers. They're going to take him, I whispered, my breath coming in short gasps. That night, I confronted Rosa. You're leaving with my son, I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of fear and rage. Rosa didn't even flinch. He's not your son, she said coldly. You gave him to us. Remember? I couldn't sleep that night. My mind raced, my heart pounded. There had to be a way. Early the next morning, before the sun had risen, I packed a small bag and crept into the nursery. My son lay there, peaceful, his tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. I scooped him up, held him close to my chest, and slipped out the back door. I didn't stop running. I found refuge in a small village far from Lagos. An elderly woman, Mama Ada, took me in, offering me shelter in exchange for helping on her farm. Life was hard, but it was ours. It was free. Years passed. My son grew into a bright, curious boy. I worked tirelessly, determined to give him the life I never had. One evening, under the soft glow of the stars, he climbed into my lap and looked up at me with innocent eyes. Mummy, why are you always happy when you look at me? I smiled, brushing my fingers over his soft curls. Because you're my greatest blessing, I whispered. And for the first time in years, I felt whole.